No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Hello. I think we're live. I just want to make sure that you can hear me, because that is something that I have had a little bit of a problem with recently. And I want to make sure before I go too far that you can hear me. So obviously experimenting a little bit with okay, yeah. It looks like I'm getting sound. So you should be able to hear me just fine. Experimenting a little bit with some new formats, experimenting a little bit with, what is it called? Streamyard. So that's kind of what I think. Oh, here we go. That's a problem. I don't know why this happens, but no, that's not what we want. We want this camera. I don't know why it's not. Yeah, so it's letting me use my proper. It's not letting me use the camera I want to use. I don't like that. Let me use my camera, fuckface. Okay, so let me mess with this for just a second. I don't know why that's happening, but it's bothering me. So we're going to see if we can get it functioning here. There we go. I think that's a better camera. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But background's a little bit different. Things are a little bit different. So anyway, this is a little bit of a experiment, so to speak. Hopefully you can bear with me. This isn't. It doesn't look like there's a lot of people watching right now either, and that's fine. I don't typically do this at this time, and even when I do, I don't have a lot of people logging into my live streams, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you are watching, thank you. And I'm gonna experiment a little bit, because so one of the things I'm attempting here is to basically use Zoom with my live stream. So I think what I'm going to try to do now is share my screen, but I want to share this Zoom meeting. No, I don't want to share that one. I want to share this one. Okay, now let's see if this works. Now this ain't working. Sharing this tab. So this is where I'm gonna have some trouble, I think. And this is why I'm doing this now, because I'm trying to do this later on. And maybe it's because I'm recording. I don't know. Okay. Bear with me. I apologize. Okay, so this is the Zoom meeting that I'm in, right? I don't want to share that screen. Aha. Okay, that's good. There we go. So I did want to do that. And I also want to go to a full screen on that. There we go. There we go. So this is a little bit of a pain in the ass. I'm sorry if you are watching this, because I am still fucking with stuff a little bit. And as long as we're working, we're golden. And it looks like we're working, so we're good. We're golden. We're golden. We're golden. We are golden. Golden as fuck. So, how you been out there, citizens of the internet? I'm wearing this shirt today in solidarity with my people in Hawaii. And this is an impromptu stream. This isn't something I was planning on really doing right now, but I have to fuck with Streamyard because I have some other things coming up. I want to make sure that it's working well for future streams as we get better. But I do love the functionality of Streamyard, and I know props to Willie Bragg and Do Dissidents and all the people out there, all the other streamers that kind of are using this, because they kind of influenced me to try it out, and it's definitely much better than what I was doing, which is live streaming through Zoom with my without, like, at least with this I can put my own watermark on it. It's not just the Zoom watermark and shit. So this camera does, like, as I change angles, it, like, the tint changes, and that might just be because I'm also running through Zoom. So I think that's part of it, right? It's like I'm running through Zoom and StreamYard simultaneously. So there's going to be a little bit of a feedback loop to some degree, but also I want to see what the quality of this looks like, because long term I'm going to move away from using Zoom. But for now, I already have sent out links to people for future meetings that I don't want to have to change. So I think long term things are going to be much better. But again, thanks for bearing with me. And there's a lot of great stuff to talk about today. I think one of the biggest news items right now among the circles that I run with online anyway, is hold on, let me turn this just a little bit to this direction. There we go. Is the complete and total what's the word I should use? Capsizing of the Bernie ship. I don't know if you've seen what's going on, but Bernie Sanders is basically, completely revealed himself as a fraud by attacking Cornel West on behalf of the Democrats. And I think a lot of people are kind of just like, wow, that's terrible. That is terrible. Can't believe you're doing that, Bernie. But let's talk about a couple things, because I got some stuff to talk about. The other big news this week, in addition to the Bernie thing, was the Trump mugshot. Have you seen this yet? Have you seen the Trump mugshot? Let's start by showing the Trump mugshot, because I'm sure you've seen it, but if you have, we need to show it just for reference, because everyone who hasn't seen it, who hasn't seen it? Let's be honest. Everyone's seen it. Wow. Now I'm on Wired magazine, that State Department magazine. So I'm doing like the double share here. You like that? The Trump mugshot. Just for you. Just so you can see it. Can you see it? I don't know. I think you should be able to see it, but yeah, probably not. Probably not. Oh no. Okay. It is not working. Okay. There we go. Now is it working? There you go. Now you can see it. Okay. Forgive me for my, chunkiness here. But I wanted to make sure you saw the Trump mugshot because it's the news item right now. So we're going to share this tab instead. I think so that's the way I have to do this. I have to share different tabs through Zoom. Since I'm trying to do this, since I'm running this meeting through Zoom and Streamyard simultaneously. So anything that I do share, I have to just know that I'm sharing a different tab. So anyway, the reason I shared that Trump mugshot is that was big news this week. And, shitlibs rejoiced over the Trump mugshot. It was a big deal. But one of the things that I tried to point out is that, so let's look at this. And let me just switch back to let me give you my, I'm really liking this StreamYard thing. It's much better than what I was doing with Zoom. So anyway, let's talk about this real quick. This is a tweet I did after the Trump mugshot came out because I just wanted to remind people about who also is a criminal. I mean, you say what you want about Trump. He's definitely, not the best person. I'm not defending Trump. I mean, I should be maybe because these the way that they've timed these indictments is just gross. But just let's take a trip down memory lane here. So to start, let's remember this. This right here is why the Russiagate thing happened, because during Clinton's campaign, one of her biggest negatives was the reality that she herself had Russia problem. She herself had a problem. She was the one who basically actually had business dealings with the Russians. So you have that. Then you have this. Hillary Clinton personally approved plan to share Trump-Russia allegation with the press in 2016, campaign manager says. And that's from CNN Politics. But this is the real smoking gun right here. DNC Clinton campaign agreed to steal dossier funding fine. Now, why would they do that? And this is all actual news. This is legitimately, legitimate news. And then last of all, let's just read this little clip here. Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee have agreed to pay a $113,000 fine, or have agreed to pay $113,000 to settle a Federal Election Commission investigation into whether they violated campaign finance law by misreporting spending on research that eventually became the infamous Steele dossier. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but that was the whole thing behind, wait, we got to start. We got to go back to this. We got to go back to this. No. See, I'm having a little bit of a problem here. This is what we got to share. There we go. And we have to go back to full screen. Here. There we go. Okay. You might be asking, why the fuck am I doing this through Zoom, even though I'm doing it through StreamYard? And that's a valid question. The reason is because I'm fucking around with my setup. And like I said before, I have, I just want to make sure that I can easily use Zoom when I need to, because, I have people that call in. So anyway, back to the issues at hand here. When the Trump mugshot came out, I think it just kind of solidified the brunch lib, kind of. It really gave them everything that they wanted. Finally, let's put it that way. But if you have been paying attention at all, what you know is that the Democrats, the biggest reason that they hate Trump is not because he's some threat to democracy or a Russian asset. It's because he's a threat to the military state to some extent. And you can see this with, I've run through this before. I don't need to retread this old ground, but I will just say that the evidence of this is the way that defense stocks dropped when Trump, for example, met with Kim Jong-un. The fact that Trump was okay with having a relationship with Russia and, working with these quote unquote rogue states that the security state wants to use to scare people, that was Trump's biggest problem. That was the reason that he, was so hated by the Democrats, who are the neocons now. So, I'm going to go ahead and share this tab now. This is an article from the Gray Zone about a recent coup in Niger. And Victoria Nuland, I don't know if you know who she is, but she is a neocon in the highest order. She's the wife of Robert Kagan, part of the Project for the New American Century. And your boy Max Blumenthal, I think, did a great job. Actually, it was Anya Parampal who wrote this article, but there's a tweet in here from Max. So anyway, let's run through this real quick, because the point I'm making here, the reason I started with the Trump mugshot and then I showed you the things the Clintons have done, is because the reality is these are the real reasons that Trump is such a third rail, and the reason that they're going so hard to keep him out of the presidential race, because he's a threat to people like Victoria Nuland. So anyway, let's read this about Niger, just to go into the weeds a little bit and give you an idea as to why Trump is so hated and why these people are what I'm saying they are. A veteran South African official detailed meeting with an unprepared and desperate acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, begging for local help, rolling back the popular coup in Niger. The recent BRICS conference might give Nuland even more to fret about. When U.S. Acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland traveled to South Africa on July 29th, her reputation as a blunt instrument of Washington's hegemonic interests preceded her. According to a veteran South African official who attended meetings With senior U.S. diplomat in Pretoria, however, Newland and her team were demonstrably unprepared to grapple with recent developments on the African continent, particularly the military coup that removed Niger's pro-Western government hours before she launched her multi-stop tour of the region. In over 20 years working with the Americans, I've never seen them so desperate, the official told the Gray Zone, speaking on the condition of anonymity. Pretoria was well aware that Newland's hawkish reputation when she arrived in Pretoria. The official described her as totally caught off guard by winds of change engulfing the region. The July putsch that saw popular military junta come to power in Niger followed military coups in Mali, and Burkina Faso that were similarly inspired by mass anti-colonial sentiment. Though Washington has so far refused to characterize developments in the Nigerian capital of Niamey as a coup, the South African source confirmed that Newland sought South Africa's assistance in responding to regional conflicts, including Niger, where she emphasized that Washington not only held significant financial investments, but also maintained 1,000 of its own troops. For Newland, the realization that she was negotiating from a position of weakness was likely a rude awakening. Serving both parties and advancing the empire one regime change op at a time. Throughout the past decade and a half, Victoria Newland has established herself as one of the most heavy-handed and effective agents of Western-directed regime change ops within the State Department. As the wife of arch-neoconservative strategist Robert Kagan, who advised both Republican presidential contender Mitt Romney and Democrat Hillary Clinton, Newland embodied the interventionist consensus that prevailed across both parties in the pre-Trump era. In fact, her first high-level job came under the watch of Vice President Dick Cheney when he appointed her to serve as his deputy chief of staff. This lady works in the Biden administration, folks. Max Blumenthal right here. Biden's point person on Russia-Ukraine is a hardcore neocon. Victoria Newland is ex-deputy policy advisor to Dick Cheney, wife of PNAC co-founder Robert Kagan, who called for the U.S. to act as a benevolent world dictator and architect of the Maidan coup that destabilized Ukraine. Here she is being sworn in. Actually, Newland's looking pretty hot back in the day. Like, she looks pretty good in this picture. She's I guess what you could say is that running wars like that really ages you. Doesn't make you look great. So I shared off Zoom and I just went directly back to the old thing. But let me go back to Zoom just to make sure that I'm there, because I do need to stay in the Zoom meeting, and maybe I just need to switch. See, and I hate that too, because it needs to be a solo window when I'm in the Zoom. No, there we go. All right. Believe me, this will get better. I apologize in advance. So, just to kind of tie this all up with a bow, this right here is why people are so excited about the Trump mugshot, because Trump is a threat to this established order. And if you paid attention, if you paid attention to any of my broadcasts, I've detailed this several times, but it was very obvious, just to recap it, what happened during the 2016 election now looking back. And listen, I'm one of the people who, I didn't know any better. I watched this unfold. I thought Trump was a piece of crap. I believed everything I was told about Trump, basically, as far as the mainstream press goes and all the crap that they sold him. And again, this is not a endorsement of Trump, so to speak, even though I would definitely endorse Trump over Biden any day of the week. I will with, in all likeliness, vote for Cornel West. I hope that he's going to be on the ballot here in California. If he is, I will make an effort. I will actually make an honest effort to vote for Cornel West, because for me, I want to vote for someone outside that two-party system. But that said, if it comes down to a Biden-Trump thing and Cornel West is not on the ballot, I will absolutely vote for Trump. And this is why, because it's very clear to me that these indictments and all of this stuff is being timed to keep him away from the White House, because they know, especially now, that he is opposed to this stuff and will do everything he can to stop it. And, there's an argument to be made that his first term in the White House, he might have been a little naive. I mean, I see a lot of people saying, like, look, if Trump was a threat to the establishment, he wouldn't have been allowed to get in the first place. And I think there's some truth to that. And honestly, I think maybe they thought he wasn't quite as much of a threat to the establishment in his initial, and maybe his term in office proved that he was even worse than they thought. And that's why they're going so hard now to get him out. But I remember Penn Jillette. So Penn Jillette, if you know who he is, Penn and Teller from Penn and Teller, very sharp guy, very smart, well-spoken dude, was on The Apprentice, so knows Trump personally. But I just remember after Trump got elected, there's this quote of his that stuck out to me, and I didn't have time to go pull it up, but he said, Trump winning is proof that the whole anyone can be president thing is actually true. He's like, I always thought that, the president was kind of like low-key selected, but the fact that Trump was able to get in there is proof that you really can get into the presidency if you go. And I think that's true. Also, another one of those things that's kind of true, because Trump, you have to be someone like Trump to get to that point to slip in, because Trump was rich enough and powerful enough. And if you read the history of that election, was kind of placed there by the Clintons. I don't think that they thought in a million years he was actually going to win, but that's how pissed off America was at that point. And I'm at, like, it's even more pissed off now. But I guess the point I'm making is that the people that say that Trump wouldn't have been allowed to get in if he was a threat to the establishment, I think that's a little misguided just because of that factor. Because you have to have the money and the power and the balls to get that far. I mean, look, Bernie Sanders was right on the edge of he could have been in the White House if he had the balls of a Trump to say, no, fuck you, Democrats. I'm not listening to you. You're all wrong. And I'm going to take your party over. He didn't have the balls to do that. Obama and, all the fake ass fools in the Democratic Party came in a second time and made him sit down. And then, of course, they ushered Biden in, which has been, oh my God, so terrible. I'm so glad I wasn't dumb enough to vote for Biden. When the Kyle Kalinskis and the people who came out after Bernie folded and were like, you got to vote for Biden now. Come on, guys. It's a choice between Biden and fascism. I knew I would. And there's a lot of the people watching me, I'm sure, are the same as me. Like we were like, nah, I know who Joe Biden is. I'm not voting. That's why Bernie Sanders was so popular, because Democrats like Joe Biden were the alternative, and no one wants that shit. You might as well just vote for a Republican. If you're going to vote for Joe Biden, you might as well just vote for Trump. If Joe Biden is a Democratic nominee, I mean, that's the reality. So anyway, I'm ranting. I'm going to try to keep this to about an hour and a half. So anyway, keeping on this theme of the election, let's talk about Bernie Sanders, because the big news in leftist circles these days is, of course, the reality that Bernie Sanders sucks now. And I just wanted to show this tweet real quick. Kind of, this is the reality. This is who Bernie Sanders is now. Bernie Sanders hits Cornel West over criticism of Biden. Okay, Bernie, there's a real question whether democracy is going to remain in the United States of America, Sanders said. So they're doing this again. They're gonna try to do this whole democracy is in danger thing. And I mean, how can you take that seriously? How can you take that seriously? I don't see how anyone can take that seriously, because it's not serious. We saw what happened with Trump. We saw what happened under Trump. It wasn't that bad. It was actually better objectively than Biden. Trump was objectively better than Joe Biden. Like, there's just no arguing that. It's just the reality. We weren't on the brink of World War III. Groceries were cheaper. Gas was cheaper. And those are just like basic metrics. I mean, we might have had a leader who upset some people, but at least he could like formulate a full sentence and like stand on his own 2 feet in a room. You know what I mean? And now what I think is happening, and I'm seeing this anyway, is the indictments are actually bringing people into the fold for Trump. You know, I saw a thing the other day about how the black vote is going to Trump, because if anyone understands being targeted unfairly by law enforcement, it's black people, right? So now Trump has the empathy of black people, because everyone who's watching what's happening can see clearly what they're doing. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're handing out indictments like they're candy. And I mean, the other thing about this that's so sad is, I mean, maybe it's not sad, it's probably for the better, is it delegitimizes the system more than it already was delegitimized. But like, how can you look at this and not go, okay, this is bullshit? You know, this whole thing is a farce. It's all politicized, and they'll just do this to whoever they want. What I think is good about this, that liberals haven't seen yet, is that now conservatives have to understand, you know, the way that this happens, and because they can see it happening to Trump. And I think that's the thing, you know, look at history, right? Look at what they did to Martin Luther King, for example. We talked about this on the last stream with Cornel West. Now they're trying to like throw him under the bus and smear him for being a tax evader, and he's not paying child support or some garbage like that. At no point did any of the shitlibs criticizing him for this, you know, obvious smear ask him for his take or what really happened. They just went, you know, the Gen Z TikTok kids that work for the Democratic Party, but will swear up and down they don't, because they get the checks through a subsidiary that isn't the Democratic Party, so they can lie with confidence. But those kids are already out here going like, oh, Cornel West, oh, he's a child, he's evaded child support payments and stuff without even looking into it. And if you go back into history, this is the exact same thing they did to people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They'll dig up things that they can hype on you, and they're doing it to Trump. And again, people get mad like, how dare you compare Trump to Martin Luther King? And you're an unserious prick. Shut the fuck up, because you know that I'm not comparing Trump to Martin Luther King. I'm comparing the tactics that are being used against Trump to the tactics that were used against Martin Luther King. It's a totally different thing. But that's the kind of jump that Democrats have to make to defend this bullshit, because, you know, they have to, because they're neocons. This is the kind of shit that the Republicans do. And I'll give you a great example, right? The gun thing, right? So this is the argument. This is how gun arguments go, because pro-gun people have been trained by PR elements to think this way. You go, hey, you know, there are a lot of gun deaths. We should really maybe like re-examine our laws and try to do things a little better, you know? the response to that is always, you can't take away guns, the Second Amendment, you can't take away guns. I'm like, okay, at no point did I say, let's take away guns. So you have to make up an argument that I'm not even making to have with yourself to avoid the actual argument that, like, hey, the gun shit is out of hand. No one wants to take away your guns, but we need better regulation of guns. That's the reality. Just like, you know, you wouldn't go, oh, anyone who wants should have a car. Like, if you're 13, go jump in a car and drive around and smash into shit. That's how the gun laws are in this country. But again, these now, and the reason I'm even bringing this up is because it's an argument style that was born out of conservative politics, and now the Democrats do that. So it's obvious that they are the conservative right-wing party because they make arguments like conservative right-wingers do. So, you know, back to the Trump thing, it's like when you say something like, oh, wow, like the same tactics that the FBI used on Martin Luther King are being used on Trump, Democrats will go, how dare you compare Trump to Martin Luther King? You're a terrible person. And again, that's not the argument that's being had. You had to make that up to avoid the actual argument, just like the gun thing I just brought up. So, sorry, I get a little intense about that because it's just stupid no matter how you look at it. You're making up an argument. These people have to make up an argument to have with themselves because they'll lose the argument that I'm making or the argument that Democrats or that Republicans are making about Trump. Like the Biden thing is like, how can you be so excited about Trump being prosecuted when the guy who's in the White House right now has so much visible evidence of corruption against him and you're defending that? You know, so you have to make up other arguments that no one's having to avoid having that argument. And it's just pathetic. And Bernie Sanders is part of that group now. So I want to show you this video that my guy, Nick Cruz from RBN put together because Nick is just nailing it here. And I'm kind of assuming that Streamyard shares the sound when I share these videos. So hopefully they do, because you know, I don't want to look stupid. Am I still on? Are we on? Here we go. So let's share. Okay. Is it sharing? It doesn't look like it is. Here we go. There we go. There we go. Let's do that. All right. Check this out. You boy, Nick.
Pro-war Democrat.
Let's start over.
Bernie Sanders pulled one of the biggest political con jobs of the modern era. Bernie Sanders took hundreds of millions of dollars from ordinary, desperate people and promised a political revolution. Now he's nothing more than an ordinary pro-war Democrat. Bernie Sanders had potential to be a leader of a movement, but instead he reduced himself into being a weaselly, spineless, little PR puppet cuck of the Democratic Party. Now, in light of a surging, perforating potential candidate.
That's too good. Nick's just laying it out. I love it.
Of Dr. Cornel West, Bernie's old friend, Bernie Sanders is throwing cold water and telling people to support the Democratic Party. According to Bernie Sanders, this is once again the most important election of our lifetime. According to Bernie Sanders, if Trump wins, it will be the end of our democracy. Bernie Sanders sounds no different than the average Morning Joe, Rachel Maddow, MSNBC shitlib at this point. Bernie, did you forget that you ran against Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and they rigged both primaries against you? He now propping up the system that is rigged against us? What a fucking coward. The job of Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the squad is to shift what it means to be a socialist to the right and create a weak, ineffective, spineless left-wing movement.
And he is 100% correct about that. I don't think there's any way to argue he is wrong about that at all. And it's kind of sad to see this. And here's the thing that I think is the saddest. People like Jimmy Dore have been calling this for a long time and have been completely correct about it. And so many people get in their feelings. The same thing happened with AOC, and I was guilty of this too. When Jimmy started really going at AOC and calling her out as a fraud and a fake, I was kind of like, oh, Jimmy, come on. Like, she might not have voted. Give her some time, give her a chance, and I did. And sure as shit, what happened? Look at AOC now. She basically does makeup tutorials on TikTok. That's her. And there's a thing about sunscreen, and same thing with Bernie. Jimmy has been screaming about Bernie angrily for a long time. And when he first started doing it, a lot of people were like, oh, how dare you? Like, it's still Bernie. Like, he's still, he's just doing what he thought was right, but no, he wasn't just doing it. Jimmy was completely right and has been. And that's why these people hate him so bad. He was right about COVID. He was right. And listen, he's the kind of person who will admit he was wrong about COVID at first. He's like, I bought it all. And then he became skeptical to some degree of certain aspects of the whole thing. And so it's kind of like this anger that people have against people like Jimmy is the genesis of it is basically them being mad that he's kind of like creating dissonance. He's making them go, oh shit, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about Bernie being a piece of shit. I don't want to think about any of that shit. So I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic that is shitty. Let's put it that way. And I don't know why my thing says BPM. I need to like fix my here, let me fix that. There we go. I'm getting better at this. So hopefully that's evident. Anyway, back to our story. Jimmy Dore was right about Bernie from day one. And I have just a couple of tweets here to share from your boy, Proud Socialist, Ryan Knight. Check this out. Because he's got it. And I just want to make sure we're golden here. Here we go. So look at this.
Is that the political situation is so controlled by people with big money that working people and poor people have given up on the process.
But what does it take to make the two major parties care?
Well, I don't know, and I don't really care. I'm not part of the two major parties.
But do you see a possibility of a third party in America? Is that really a practical option?
Well, this is an issue that's been debated for about 100 years in the United States of America. And there are those people like myself who do see that that is the future. There are other people who think that one should work within the Democratic Party. My experience in working within the Democratic Party is that it's useless. Not my experience, I haven't, but observing good people who have. Ultimately, I think what you find out on the national level and on the state level is that the people who control the Republican Party, not very different from the people who control the Democratic Party.
There it is.
Is that the political
There it
situation
is.
so
There it is. That's the truth. That is the truth of the matter. And people know this. That is why Bernie Sanders was popular. And that is why the stuff that he's doing now is so disgusting and it's alienating so many people because no one can take it seriously. You know, no one can how can you take Bernie seriously at this point? When he's become everything, he's become the opposite of everything that we liked about him. It's terrible. It's terrible. So let's move on. I wanted to have you ever heard the System of a Down song, Prison Song? The lyrics go, they're trying to build a prison, they're trying to build a prison, they're trying to build a prison for you and me to live in. And it kind of, the song itself, it's a great song because it goes into a lot of detail about how drugs are used to imprison people and, you know, the American police state is basically built to incarcerate us. I actually did I did this thing a while ago where I made this video, and if you haven't seen it, it's fire, so check it out. But it's a rap. It's AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene doing my version of "Fuck the Police," but it's called "Fund the Police," and so they're like "Fund the Police," like, and it's so there's one bar in it where MTG goes, "So let's fund the prison complex till we all live in jails." It goes, let me give you the full bar because I think credit to me, I think this is a pretty clever fucking line. But it goes, "Our police state is too big to fail, so let's fund the prison complex till we all live in jails." And that's kind of I kind of borrowed that sentiment from Prison Song by System of a Down. So check this out. I want to show you this this tweet that got me thinking today from my boy Jeremy Ward. And it says, "If they can imprison us, they can house us." Food for thought. And it's like, yeah, that is the truth. Like, if we can afford to put a bunch of people in jail, why can't we afford, you know, the mental institutions and the mental health stuff that we used to do for people back in that Reagan got rid of, you know? So anyway, it got me thinking about that System of a Down song. And I wanted to share this with you too. So check this out. We'll just I'm not going to read the whole thing, but so the lyrics for this are, "They're trying to build a prison. They're trying to build a prison. Following the rights movement, you clamp down with your iron fist. Drugs become conveniently available for all the kids. Following the rights movement, you clamp down with your iron fist." But this line, "Minor drug offenders fill your prisons. You don't even flinch. All our taxes paying for your wars against the new non-rich. Minor drug offenders fill your prisons. You don't even flinch. All our taxes paying for your wars against the new non-rich." They're trying to build a prison. They're trying to build a prison. All research. So the song is making a statement about, you know, drug incarcerations and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to tie it to that whole idea that, look, we can afford to put all these people in jail. I mean, why don't we divert that money to housing homeless people, to mental illness facilities where it used to be until the Reagan era? You know, why are we such a cold society that we can't take care of each other, that it's such a crime to take it? Like, that's the thing that blows me away the most. And I think that conservatives are largely coming around to this, and that's a good thing. I think that there's a consensus being built among the left and the right that, look, why are we dumping all this money into Ukraine when we could be using that money here to improve our infrastructure, to house the homeless, to rebuild Maui, for example, Solidarity, Hawaii. It's, I don't like it. And this tweet from Jeremy got me thinking about it today. So I got a couple more things I want to share before we cut out today. And one of them is a clip from Sabby Sabs talking to Matt Taibbi. And I mean, hopefully I can land on some of the high points of this. But I think what's good about it, what they're really talking about is how the landscape in politics now is no longer about, left versus right, conservative versus liberal, any of that shit. It's really about rich versus poor, or rich versus everyone else, really. The people who really have all the wealth versus everyone else. And, you hear Jimmy and RBN and people, really, I think it was Max Blumenthal that I first heard this term from, professional managerial class. Look, I was part of that. I worked in the digital industry. I know those people very well. They were my former peers. And honestly, I can tell you, I don't like that world. Because in that world, I had to be someone that I'm not. I had to pretend to be someone that I'm not. And eventually, that world it's a house of cards, because it's built on false pretenses. And, I won't get into the details, but I had people weaponizing the HR department against me because I speak from the cuff. Like, I'm kind of a raw dude and I just say what I think. And if you know me, and people who do know me personally know that I've never hurt anyone. I'm not a racist. I'm not a sexist. I'm not against any. I love everybody. I get along well with everybody. But these kind of tactics now, these political tactics have seeped into everything. They've seeped into the general workplace. So like the way that you would get a politician canceled now can get, your boss canceled or one of your coworkers canceled. And what you'll have now is a world, or at least a corporate world, where it's your office, your workplace is just full of people who are disingenuously weaponizing HR tactics against each other instead of actually doing anything of value, right? So you just have people now that are just like, oh, that guy called me this, and he needs to be fired for it. And so that person gets ahead, or can get into that guy's spot or get that guy fired. And then someone around them sees it and goes, oh, that worked for them, so I'm going to try it. And pretty soon you just have a company full of people weaponizing the HR department against each other, But that aside, that's being done for a reason. And I think let's talk about this video with Matt and Sabby real quick, because they get into some of the nuance of the current system and how broken it is. Here, I'm going to start. Let's.
Howard, you wrote an article recently, which I think everyone needs to read this. It says Campaign 2024, not left versus right, but affluent versus everyone else. It says the realignment of major parties away from blue against red and towards a rich versus poor dynamic is America's most undercovered political story. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I do feel like this is where we're headed. And I feel like there are a lot of there are a lot of people that kind of like jump in whenever you bring up this
Sabby, we're already there. It's not where we're headed. We're here.
issue about top versus bottom or rich versus poor. They will jump in as deflectors and try to bring it back to Donald Trump or try to bring it back to, we could get the.
That is why Trump is a thing. That's why Trump is a thing. That's why the Democrats keep trying to run against him. That's why, despite the corruption of Biden, Trump is being indicted left and right. You're 100% right, Sabby.
Crazy far right and not comment on the issue of poor and affluent. And I don't know if you saw this video recently. There was a video went viral called Alabama Mama, where she just went on this rant talking about how it's basically this, affluent class now and everybody else is at the bottom, where the middle class is pretty. And
liberals or leftists, people of my ilk, Bernie people, this is an opportunity. This Alabama mom she's talking about, Oliver Anthony, this is a populist uprising. And if we can get past the
this guy doesn't like trans people, or this guy said something about women I don't like.
If you can get past that stupid fucking ID politics bullshit, we can get some real change in the grassroots. Look at the strikes that are happening. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. The WGA, the Writers Guild, and the fucking actors are striking. Guess who else is about to strike? The auto workers. Guess who else is striking? The UPS people actually won concessions. I don't think they're actually striking now because they threatened to strike and got something because everything is done by mail now. So we have to get past the stupid fucking culture war bullshit that was used, frankly, to divide us from day one, and focus on things like Medicare for all and, housing for the poor and infrastructure and living wage. These are all things that populist conservatives are on board with now.
Pretty much been wiped away. And I want to get your opinion about that, because I feel like heading into 2024, I'm seeing it again where a lot of people are focused on, you got to go vote for Biden because we don't want to get Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
Not mentioning the fact that both of them are corporate and both of them are affluent. So either way, if you're poor or if you're working class, you're still going to lose. And it just seems like to me, you would think that the majority of Americans would get this by now. But I feel like there's a lot of people who still really believe we have to vote for one of these teams, whether it's red or blue. And I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is something I've thought about for, I don't know, almost 20 years now. I've been covering presidential campaigns since 2004. And it's something we started to notice, I think, in 08 and then especially in 12. Is this pretty dramatic change in the composition of the electorate. So just to take an example, if you go back to the year Clinton was elected in 1992, the most affluent congressional districts were somewhere between 60 and 65% likely to be Republican back then.
This is interesting data.
So the top class sort of 1% voter was sometimes sort of self-interestedly voting for Republican politicians, either for tax reasons or because they were actually politically conservative or whatever. But in the period since then, the Democrats really stressed this idea of we're moving away from being backed by unions. We're going to vote for NAFTA. We're going to start competing for donations from Wall Street. We're going to help deregulate,
So there's a clip that Jimmy plays a lot of Chuck Schumer talking about how for every blue collar voter the Democrats lose, they're going to gain 2 white collar voters in the upper class suburbs. So this is an intentional thing.
Allow the Citigroup merger, deregulate commodities trading, all these things that led to the 2008 crash. And the Democratic Party, I think, basically left behind all of its class-based politics moved to this paradigm where they campaigned almost entirely on social issues like, choice, which isn't bad. It just means that it's different, right? They were getting a different kind of voter. And now, Marcy Kaptur from Ohio, I put this in the piece I wrote. She put a chart up showing like the richest congressional districts in America and the poorest congressional districts in America. And you can see that on one side, it's almost all blue, and on the bottom, it's almost all red. And she was saying, how is it possible that the Republicans are representing the people who are struggling now? And that's the reason for that is that there's been this shift in how you predict who's going to vote for whom now. Income and education are the absolute predictors over and above almost anything. It used to be like, the abortion issue used to be reign supreme. That's really not the case anymore. Income and education almost signify almost completely. If you live in a very affluent suburb, almost everybody's a Democrat. And the problem with that is that it's left.
So what he just said about abortion too is notable because if you look at candidates on the Republican side, like Nikki Haley, for example, Nikki Haley is pretty sane on the abortion issue. She's like, abortion should be legal in cases of rape and incest and up to a certain point. I mean, honestly, if she's a woman, so she should be that way. Any woman should be like argue for their own personal reproductive rights. That's what you should be doing, right? But anyway, the point that Matt's making here is, again, it's not about left versus right anymore. It's not about red versus blue anymore. And someone like Nikki Haley is less about a pro-life agenda, more about pro-Ukraine, pro-war. And you have Democrats. The Democrats haven't done shit on abortion. They've intentionally ran on it and then shut and not done anything. That's what they do. They're a PR company. They're great at PR. The Obama administration perfected that shit because they had all the I hate calling it woke, but they had the whole look how diverse we are. Look, we're super diverse as we bomb the shit out of every country and drone strike civilians and give money to the banks and let all these criminals that wreck the economy walk and do all this shit, and it's I'm absolutely for diversity. I think it's what makes us strong. As Oliver Anthony caught a lot of shit from conservatives for saying that, but it's the truth. It's what makes the reason America has been so successful over the years is because of our diversity, because we accept people of all cultures, of all religions, of all races, of all anything. It's a melting pot, and Los Angeles and New York, if you live in any of those cities, it's why they're great cities. I mean, the best part of LA is the diversity of culture and the different restaurants and the different people. And it's amazing, so it's that's just the truth. But you can see now that what's being weaponized, you can see now that the left and right don't matter. We a lot of the, especially even on the real core cultural issues, everyone agrees because, the Democrats will sit and say conservatives are fascists and whatever, but talk to a conservative voter or a Trump voter and ask them about gay marriage. They don't give a shit. They're let gays get married. They don't care anymore about gays getting married. Back in the day, that was a wedge issue that was leveraged by conservatives, but it's just, we've moved so far past that. You're not going to see anyone in the Republican Party running on, now it's the trans thing where it's okay, look, trans people deserve every right that anyone has, that a regular cisgender person or has or whatever. I'm totally on board with that. But it gets to the point where it becomes obnoxious, and that's when you start losing people, and it gets and it's being weaponized by the conservatives because this is what both parties do. They find an issue like that and they point out the most extreme stupid shit that's happening. I saw a thing this morning, and I'm deviating a little bit, but it was this guy Jake Shields, who for the most part has some pretty good views, but he definitely leans right. And he posted this article, and it was basically about the mayor of Chicago was trying to sue auto companies because they here, let me just close this for a second. the mayor of Chicago was basically trying to sue auto companies because they didn't put alarms in these cars and there's a lot of theft, which is dumb. You know, it's like, and so Jake's thing was like, this is you stupid ass liberals trying to go after the car companies instead of the criminals. And it's like, Jake, really, bro? What I would, the point I was making is these kind of stories are these like tiny little stupid things that, yeah, if that's true and that's really what this guy's doing, that's dumb. But these stories are hyped or fabricated to make people like you mad at, you know, people who steal cars instead of the people who create the economic conditions where people have to fucking steal cars. You know, like those are the real problems. Like, why do at no point is Jake Shields going like, why are people stealing a lot of cars? It's not because of the Biden economy, right? Like, it's not because the economy fucking sucks, you know? And it's like, he's just mad that this dumb Democrat guy is trying to sue auto companies for not putting in alarms in the car, which is dumb. But at the end of the day, those kind of stories are designed to make people like Jake go, fuck these people and the criminals, and ignore the people who are creating economic conditions where people have to steal cars to get by, you know. And I think that's the point that gets lost in a lot of these things. And it's so evident now that we're being divided like this. And that's why I'm kind of focusing on this, because Matt and Sabby right here are giving you the data to prove this hypothesis.
The kind of vanishing middle class voter that you refer to without any good choices. You know, the only choices they had in 2016 that made sense were Bernie, but Bernie, of course, was not going to allow to be, become the Democratic nominee, or this furious nihilistic protest vote, which was Trump. And obviously they voted for him. And I think it's important to understand why, but this all has to do with money to me, and the fact that it's become so much harder for people at the lower end of the spectrum, and nobody will talk about it because nobody wants to admit that dynamic exists.
Forms
All right,
and
so let's,
surveys like this get responses.
Since I don't have YouTube Premium, we're going to abandon that clip at this point. So I have one more thing to show y'all before I log off today. And this has been good. It was a little rocky at the start, but I really love this software in this format. It's much easier for me to control as a solo act. And I think that the quality of my streams is going to get much better as a result. So thanks again to all y'all, specifically Willie, Bragg, and the Due Dissidents guys for turning me on to StreamYard, which is fantastic. So this last thing I want to run by y'all, I think it's so cool. Have you ever heard the band Suicidal Tendencies? So I'm a big music person. You know, if you know much about me, you know that music is my thing. It's my passion. It's what I love. And specifically, you know, I came up in the 90s. So, you know, that era of like metal and grunge is an era that I'm very well versed in, but I love everything. Like I know a ton about hip hop and R&B and underground hip hop and even jazz. One of my favorite genres of all is soul, like old 70s funk. Like that's what I've been listening to a lot lately. Like Sly Stone, James Brown, Parliament, Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield, Betty Davis. Have you ever heard Betty Davis? If you've never heard Betty Davis, go look up Betty Davis, Nasty Gal. One of the baddest funk artists, like, and a very underrated woman. Obviously, her name is Betty Davis. So it's like when I'm like, yo, have you heard Betty Davis? Not the actress. I always have to say that. But for real, if you don't know, now you know. Google Betty Davis, Nasty Gal. She has a song called Dedicated to the Press that is so hard. It's like one of the hardest songs ever. Anyway. The reason I'm talking about music is because I have this clip, this footage of Mike Muir from the band Suicidal Tendencies, and he's talking about and I had no idea about this. I'm Suicidal for life. Like I've been a Suicidal fan. I've been a Suicidal fan for a long time since I heard Lights Camera Revolution, which me and my buddies used to blast all day, every day, like in the early 90s while we smoked joints and especially like Send Me Your Money and You Can't Bring Me Down. And, that one had like the breakdown. Fuck you, Jack, I'm a lunatic. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Fuck you, Jack, I'm a lunatic. Yeah, anyway, I love Suicidal. And the thing that's cool about Mike Muir is he's always had such a he's always been a sharp guy, and his message, Suicidal's message, has always been about like self-reliance and believing in yourself. And anyway, I'm going to shut up and I'm just going to share this with you because the reason this really stuck out to me is because he talks a lot about censorship, and I did not realize this, but this hit me so hard because one of the reasons that Suicidal didn't break through like Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax and some of these other thrash bands is because of their name, because they're called Suicidal Tendencies, and a lot of record stores banned them for that. They couldn't do a lot of tours, and by record stores I mean like major chain stores like Walmart and shit wouldn't sell Suicidal Tendencies records because of their name. So listen to some of this, and serious props to this guy VidMag Media who did this interview and the questions he asked. This guy is the man. Go subscribe to him. In fact, why am I not subscribed? I'm subscribed to him now. Probably because I watched it on one of my other channels. But anyway, this is absolutely brilliant. And I don't know if we'll have time to listen to the whole thing. I probably got another 15 minutes, but let's listen to it.
Hello there, this is Jeff Redding for VidMag TV. And
Jeff Redding.
our special
Jeff
guest
Redding
for
is a
this segment of
badass.
VidMag is Mike Muir from Suicidal Tendencies. And we are going to be talking to him today about the censorship issue. Mike, want to say hi? Hello. You might have to speak up a little bit louder.
I'll tell you what, let me pull this up a little closer too, just to make
The sound on this is pretty terrible for the record, but I'll probably jump
Mike,
forward a little bit. But
you've been kind of at the heart, or maybe not the heart, but you've been involved in the censorship controversy. What basically has happened or surrounding Suicidal Tendencies? What have people been saying about the band?
Well, I mean, for a long time, we've had a lot of problems. It's a different situation with Suicidal Tendencies, though. A lot of times people put us in with the censorship thing, but with different bands, in a sense, they try to use the thing. Like a lot of times they'll come with the album covers. They put out covers they know that stores aren't going to carry deliberately, so they get the press for it and use it and kind of stuff. And the kind of things that have happened to us, a lot of
that sounds like something Jane's Addiction would do.
People don't even know about, because if it was any other band, they would have sent out press releases and used it. I mean, there's not very many bands that have the Secret Service come to their house. When we did one of.
So right off the bat, first of all, great point. Like what he's saying is they've been fucked with so much and they don't really tout it. They don't make a big deal out of it. So a lot of people don't know that they're fucked with all the time. But also, did you hear what he said? They had the Secret Service come to their house. I'd like to hear more about that story. I'm going to have to Google that.
Our photo covers, the police arrested like 56 people on private property for no reason, took them in, for just ridiculous things. And then all to the point of like our last EP was called Feel Like Shit, Deja Vu. And so a lot of stores couldn't carry it. And even on that situation with Epic, our label, they weren't worried about putting it out. They released it in Europe first, and they were worried about putting it out in the States that way. And we said, hey, a lot of people don't carry our record because of the name Suicidal Tendencies. So what are they going to do? Double not carry our record? Just put it out, Feel Like Shit. It's obviously not going to get out of chain stores and things like that. But, there's nothing wrong with it. And it's in a sense when we do things, we didn't put shit in it to a sense like get people upset or something. But sometimes there's only certain ways to say anything. And the best way to say it is the truth. And, so we have a situation where it's really easy because of our name. A lot of people like to attack us and stuff. And that goes from everything to the religious people saying we're satanic, to the PMRC and things like that.
I understand that a lot of people won't even print the entire name of the band when they do press.
What he's talking about with them being satanic too, he's wearing a cross. I don't know if you can see it, but
Well, there's a lot of,
there's a point when the cameraman like starts zooming in on it.
I mean, there's a lot of stations that won't play us, and even when Epic signed us, they went to like the AOR stations, the CHR, and about our name specifically, and I think it was 85 to 90% said they would not play us regardless of what the music was, simply because of our name. And even a lot of the college stations that are supposedly liberal, they can't say our name. They have to say Tendencies or ST, which is like, it's pretty scary when, you know.
So this is 1990, and he's saying colleges that are censoring them in the early 90s. So it's gotten, that was 30 years ago, and it's only gotten worse.
Look, non-commercial stations can't even say it. So there's that problem. But we've had it for a long time, and going back to '84, we could have been basically the first band that was really hard to get signed to a major, but the two majors that were interested was on the one condition that we changed our name. And I could understand if it was my business and running a record, label, you're going to have a lot of problems with the name Suicidal Tendencies. And to me, it's kind of stupid. If you take the exact same song and you have a different name, they can play it. But if it's Suicidal Tendencies, they can't. And but we said no, and it's a situation. There's nothing wrong with our name because other people don't understand it, don't mean it's wrong. And then it's
So there's a point. The point that I'll jump off this clip is coming up, but they make a point about the lack of consistency of the censors. That's really good. And that's the main thing I wanted to touch on in this.
the next thing they can probably come up with an idea. Why don't you change the way you look? Because people aren't going to understand the way you
But I think that's interesting. What he said, I don't know if you caught it, but he said they could have been one of the first heavy bands signed to a major, but both the majors that offered them deals told them they wanted them to change their name. And he was like, "No, we're not changing our name. Fuck off."
look, and then maybe you should change your music a little bit and then change this and this and that. But you don't change things when you're not wrong.
You don't change things when you're not wrong.
What about the current video?
Also, Rob Zombie made this great point about, he's like, everyone I know that gets on that deal, and he's like, I always just did what I wanted, because as soon as you start doing like something that's not you, everyone can tell, and it doesn't work. And honestly, the reason people liked your art in the first place is because it was authentic and original. And so, a label comes in and tries to change you or change your name. It's like, why even bother signing a band at that point? They're successful and they're enjoyed because of what they are now. And you're going to come in and try to change them?
Yeah. That's an interesting story too, because a lot of people are getting real upset about that. And I mean, we being right now on tour and stuff, we travel different places, and people kind of are our eyes and ears when we get there. And they tell us, like in Chicago and other places, said they're no longer going to play our video because it's promoting gang violence and this and that. And I don't understand how somebody can come up with that stuff. There's nothing in the song that is basically, it's a very powerful song. And there's not a lot of difference between like Public Enemy saying fight the power and Suicidal Tendencies saying you can't bring me down.
So their song, You Can't Bring Me Down, the first track from Lights Camera Revolution, was basically not allowed to be played. And the point he's making here, this is where they talk about the inconsistency of censorship, and we'll jump after this, but this is what I wanted you to hear because they make such a good point. And it almost is like a racism thing. Listen.
And if anything, it's more of a personal, powerful statement and stuff. And people get really upset with that video and say it's like I don't know what the word is. It's like promoting anti-society or this or that. And I don't understand when someone says, first off, it's taken from the start, straight out, can change what's in my heart. No one can tear my beliefs apart. You can't bring me down. What's so bad about that, And the whole song is basically talking about believing in yourself and never backing down when you believe in yourself. And people get really upset about that because I think people really want everyone to be like the sheep following everybody else. But with Suicidal Tendencies, we don't say do things just to do the opposite of whatever other people do. We say do things that you believe in when you know what you believe in, when you're smart enough to know what you believe in. And when you come to that decision, then don't back down because someone else tells you should do something else when you know you're right.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I mean, it's there's been through the years so many songs that have been positive personal statements like that and everything, but because they weren't as maybe insightful as the Suicidal Tendencies video is, or the other two videos that we have in part one of the censorship program are Violence World in a World and Ministries Burning Inside, neither of which will MTV play from what I understand. And of course, the one that we used from you, we used uncensored because you've been having problems with that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back even further than that. It's a certain situation. Like, there's a lot of videos that I see, and I can understand why they'd have a problem with. Like MTV, as they were told to us, they said, we feel very comfortable playing you between 11 and 2 on Saturday night on Headbangers, but we'll play you at no other time under any other circumstances. And when they did the Headbangers tour with Anthrax wanted us to do it, but they said they could not do it because of our name, and they were worried about corporate sponsors, and that's their, their business, and I can understand that.
Isn't that funny that a band called, I mean, and I love Anthrax too, and this is no disrespect to them whatsoever, but it's like a band like Anthrax is okay. Anthrax is a disease that kills cattle, I guess. I don't know. I mean, remember the anthrax attacks after 9/11? This was obviously before 9/11. But Suicidal Tendencies, that's just a bridge too far. Like, Anthrax is cool, but Suicidal Tendencies, sorry.
But we did another video. We did 2 videos for How Would I Laugh, one for the song off the record, one for the heavy emotion version that was off the EP, and they would not play that one. And that was really ridiculous because when people see it, they go, why won't they play it? I go, I don't know. There's nothing in there that's anything wrong whatsoever. And the Waking the Dead, which we did off the EP too, it took them 3 months of editing before they accepted it, and there was nothing wrong with it, basically. And they kept on coming back and saying it was fine, and they say, nope, you can't play it. You got to change this, this, and that. And basically, when we do our videos, even with the You Can't Bring Me Down video, we started off with the original storyboard, and it had to slice everything because they wouldn't blow it. You can't show this, you can't show that. And it's really, the really unfortunate thing is the majority of the things that we had to change before we even filmed it was stuff that would have been seen in other videos, or in other videos were a lot worse, so to speak. But in the Suicidal Tendencies, you couldn't do it. I mean, literally, if we presented a video to them with ideas that had been on air, the whole thing had been on different videos from different songs, they would say no, where they would do it with Bon Jovi or Skid Row or something like that.
This is where they talk about the
like hypocritical. That's
inconsistency
what we have a real
thing.
problem with. It's one thing if they're consistent, but when they say Suicidal Tendencies can't do this, but David Coverdale can, then there's a problem. That's what I think.
Well, that's like Two Live Crew gets arrested
Listen to
for
this.
doing what they do, and Dice Clay gets up on stage in the same town and has no problem, and people laugh and say, "Oh, that's funny," And there's a lot of this inconsistency going on at this point.
That's such a fantastic point. Let's listen to that again.
Well, that's like Two Live Crew gets arrested for doing what they do, and Dice Clay gets up on stage in the same town and has no problem, and people laugh and say, "Oh, that's funny." And there's a lot of this inconsistency going on at this point, and that's one of the things that's got me most worried about it, because these people are being inconsistent. They're not dealing with everybody the same way. And I mean, what kind of things are going on?
So that's where I'm going to end, because I see that parallel with what's going on today in our world, and the lack of consistency, because some people can say things that other people can't, and unless you're saying something that's violent or threatening, or something that's causing legitimate harm, you should be able to say what you want. That's what this country is founded on, and it annoys me to no end that there are people who think otherwise, because they're not very bright. It's like, hey, you're not thinking straight, thinking that way. It's not smart. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. I think this format is going to be a lot better. It's going to allow me to be more consistent. I'm going to have less gaps in my sound. I'm going to be able to be more creative with, the types of stuff that I do and the settings. I kind of have moved around. I kind of like moved my room around a little bit here. So you see in a little bit of my behind me out the back window now, which will probably change. I mean, I don't know. This was kind of an impromptu stream. So, I mean, I don't give a shit what you see. Like, I just try to keep it consistent. So, you know, but I'm really liking this format, and I'm really happy about this. And I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about as we move forward. Wow. I mean, I was going to say it's depressing to see Bernie, you know, the whole thing this week has been the Bernie going after Cornel West, and just fully mask off moment for Bernie Sanders there, you know, just kind of, hey, I'm a full scale Democrat at this point. And that's just, it burns, man. It burns. It's like, feel the burn. We got burned. Oh my God. Like Nick said, it's like we got scammed. Like we sent these people to DC to shake up the status quo. I mean, look at AOC. You know, I want to stop dwelling on her, but it's like she's just such a shining example of what happens. It's such a very visible example. Like, just look at the trajectory. I mean, what's the trajectory? Was it 2018 when she first got in? Something like that. So that's a 5-year case study, right? Of AOC. 5-year case study from Justice Democrat on small dollar donations to corporate Democrat shilling for war, all that garbage. So anyway, thank y'all for tuning in. The cats that did, and looking forward to doing this a lot more and increasing quality. I have a couple of audio only podcasts up now, but I don't want to push this yet because I'm going to get the whole library up and start really thinking in audio terms too, because I've started listening to more audio podcasts, and I want to make sure that we have this thing available in an audio format for people to listen to. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you all have a great day. And I will be live again tomorrow night, I believe. So we'll see you then.